Hey guys, BMI here today with a meta update for day 1 of Heads of the Omen. So we're going to be covering the decks that have been dominating ladder in the first couple of hours so that you can net deck them and also manage to pick up some free wins. So we're currently on www.shadowverseMaster.com where you can check out all of the deck lists, including the ones featured in today's video. We'll also check a link in the description below, so make sure to check that out after. But the first deck we're going to cover is Loot Sword by CQ. So if you haven't seen this deck already, I'll cover the main cards and then the main game plan as well. So Lair of Dissipation is a new 1 play point amulet. So you don't have to use this straight away, you can cast it and then you can engage it anytime. And you can pick to get either the Gilded Blade and the Gilded Necklace, or you can pick to get the Gilded Goblet and the Gilded Boots to your hand. And so what you pick will depend on the situation and what loot cards you're missing for the fusion. But ultimately it's a very versatile card and it gives you 2 loot cards for just 1 play point. So it's quite flexible. The next card we have Returning Slash. So this card's extremely strong. It's the first fuse card we've got. So effectively you always want to fuse at least 1 card to this, because when you fuse a card to it, it gains a bonus effect as well. So its base effect is you deal 2 damage to a random enemy follower, and you also add a Gilded Blade as well. But if you fuse to it, you also draw cards. So this card replaces itself. Not only does it replace like the card draw, but it also replaces a loot card as well. Right? So typically you want to fuse a Gilded Blade to this card because you're getting a Gilded Blade back anyway. But regardless, like it's not too difficult to like kind of work out when you need to use this card, right? And occasionally you might want to save it in your hand because there is a 4 play point gold follower that we'll be talking about later. So just keep that in mind too. Next up, we have 3 copies of Quick Blader. So this card is probably your best turn 1 play. Like you don't really want to play the amulet on turn 1 if you can help it. Basically, Quick Blader is great because like at the moment, it makes up the fact that some of your 2-drops are kind of understated for their cost. So if you do have the 1-drop, which a lot of decks don't have access to, your 1-drop makes up for your disadvantage in your 2-drops. And then the rest of the deck is broken. So Luminous Lance Trooper, obviously one of the best 2-drop sword cards at the moment. Of course, we still run it. So next up, we have Supplicant of Dissipation. So it's a 2 play point 1/2 follower. So it is mildly understated, which means that other decks have this very small opportunity to gain advantage over you if they have a 2/2. However, this card on Fanfare gives you a Gilded Necklace. It's a loot card that gives you +0, +1, and Ward. And then when it dies, it gives you Gilded Blade. So even if the 2/2 trades over this, you can use the Gilded Blade to do a 1 damage ping to whatever killed it. So overall, even though it is slightly tempo inefficient, it does give you 2 loot cards that can make back that disadvantage. And you do have to run this because you need the loot density in order to use the other cards. Next up, we have Devotee of Dissipation. So 2 play point 2/1. So on Fanfare, you gain Gilded Boots, and it's worth noting that you can actually play the boots onto it on turn 3 to get the 3/1 rush. And so this is like basically a removal to clear like, 3 3s in an emergency, for instance, right? So card's not bad at all. Basically, it is a little bit vulnerable if you play it on turn 2 and then they have a 1 damage ping. But if they don't have a 1 damage ping, if they have to play 2/2, then this card is effectively super strong. And then when it dies, you get a Gilded Goblet to your hand. So effectively, like, these are your 2 play point kind of loot generators, and so you do need to play them to the field in order to get their loots into your hand. We have 1 copy of Ignominious Samurai. We just don't have space to run everything else. It's still a great card, obviously. 2/1 rush in the early game, and then once you go Super Evo, you gain Bane. So 1 copy just to fill in space. Then we have 3 copies of Octress Hollowness Manifest. So this card, you really do want to play this on curve. It's 3/3 in stats, which is very good for a 3-drop. But then you get access to the crest, right? And so the crest is, whenever you play your fuse loot card, you advance the crest by 1, and then you add Remnant of Hollowness to your hand. And so you want to play that after your Sinciro, and you do an extra 4 damage to enemy leader. So you'll be doing like 12 damage in 1 turn, right? So you definitely want to play this early, but you can play on turn 4, something like that, or later in the game, and you can evolve with Gilded Blade and Gilded Necklace. It is worth noting that with this particular card, your crests don't stack, so you need to wait for the first crest to run out first, then you play the second one. But overall, like, this card is very good. You want to play this as early as possible, and it'll set you up for the rest of the game. Next up, we have Rose Princess Knight. So 3/2 rush, you saw in the previous set. So basically, it just kills anything that's damaged. You can use Gilded Blade to ping something, and then use Rose to clear. And then also in turn 5, you can just play this, search for one of your 2-drops, so Luminous, any of your loot followers, and maybe Ignominious Samurai. So just 1 copy, just to fill in space. And then next up we have a Congregant of Dissipation. This card's broken, so basically it's a 3/3 4-drop, and then you add 2 of these to your hand, and so you can actually play Gilded Boots in this straight away and make it a 4/3 rush. But basically, the broken part of this card is that every time you play a fused loot card, you deal 3 damage to random enemy follower. There's no limit to this, right? So if you have multiple fused cards in hand, you can fuse once, fuse twice, and for 0 play points, you're pinging 2 followers in the field for 3 damage each, or like 1 follower twice for 3. And then you can also Evos to get a play point back if needed. You can trade as a 5/5. This card just does a little bit too much. It doesn't even need to use Evo point. In fact, most of the time you don't want to use the Evo point. And so basically it means that this deck doesn't have to manage its Evos super tightly, because this card is basically making up for any tempo disadvantage that you might otherwise have. And then the next up, we have 2 copies of Zirconia. So of course, still a very strong turn or Evo play, but occasionally you might find other uses for it. So 2 copies, I mean, it's fine. This guy seems to like a lot of like 1-0s and random 2-0s. I mean, it's what it is. 3 copies of Albert. So Albert, it's a great card. Like, you can Storm Evo face, especially turn 9 after Sinciro. It's worth noting that although Sinciro uses Super Evo, Albert, you don't need to Super Evo, you can just use your normal Evo. So after your Sinciro, you do 8 damage, and then your Albert probably 10 damage, and you just need to find 2 random damage anywhere else, which might just be from Octress, right? So basically, this card, of course you run 3 copies, it's just still the best finisher in the game. Oh, not in the game, but in Soulcraft at least. And then we have Amelia, Silver Captain, so this card, obviously 3 play points, draw 2 cards from your deck, and then Super Evo is still effective, even though it's not as good without stuff like Luminous Mage, sorry. But this card, obviously, it just makes sure you don't run out of resources. Consistency tool, you still have to run 3 copies. And then we've got the new card, Sincero Head Dissipation. So this card is really busted. Basically, you want to fuse 4 different loot cards to this, and then when it's played, you do 4 damage AoE, including to leader, and you Super Evo it, you do 4 damage again, and if for some reason they still have a follower on board, you can trade into it. So it's like 8 damage minimum, but maybe 9 damage if you set it up. And then if you're on 7 play points, use a loot card generated by Octress to do another 4 damage. So usually this card will be like a 12 damage play, and then even if they heal up a little bit, you can use Albert or you can use Odin to finish up the game. Like, we have so many storm options in this deck. We have so many ways to poke, especially with Quick Blader in the early game. And then if they don't fully clear our board, because Luminous Lancer, for instance, is very difficult to clear on turn 2, then you can kind of get poke damage into them, and you can force them to kind of trade into you. And then you can reset everything with Congruent Dissipation. If they fail to clear, you can Zirconia Evo. And then once they've taken a bunch of damage, Sincero, Albert, Odin. Like, this deck just has too much kind of storm damage, and it's very difficult to avoid getting chipped. And essentially, this deck is just too efficient at what it does. And so that's the first Loot Sword deck that we're looking at. The next one's a 20 win streak deck by Rika. So he's a pro player. And so he's cut down the copies of Lair to 1. But let's see what else he's doing. So he's running 3 copies of Prim. So I think he just likes the fact that you can coin this out on turn 1. And you get the 3/3. And then you can kind of build up your pressure from there. He is running 1 copy of the Shinobi Squirrel as well. So this card, when you evolve it, you get another copy, and it's also an ambush. So this card's quite interesting. I think maybe he's just not counting on there being a lot of AoE damage at the moment, especially early in game. It is just a 1-up as well. And then apart from that, 3 copies of the loot package. Also the 1 copy of Ignomous Samurai. Octress, of course, 1 of Grimnir. I mean, Grimnir is still good, like, it's splashable. In Sword always has been. 3 copies of Voss. So that's a card we actually didn't see in the previous list. Voss is still one of the best 3 play point cards in the game, unless you save Evo points. And played early curve, you can clear their board, and you can leave a 2/1 and force them to respond. So, and also the ambush effect is not bad as well. I mean, if they can't answer a 4 damage face, and in a deck like this, if you take 4 damage, it can be quite lethal. Of course, 3 copies of Congruent, most broken card at the moment. Well, I mean, Sincero might be close, but this is like obviously top 2 most broken loot cards. And then we have 3 copies of Albert, of course, your finisher, 3 copies of Odin, your finisher, Sincero, your finisher / board clear, so no deck can really compete with you. And then 3 copies of Amelia to fill your hand up. So as you can see, all of these Loot Sword decks, they follow a very similar pattern. Early game, you just want to hit them with Quick Blader, curve out your 2 drops, and then basically you can just play whatever, go face all the time, and then you can use Congregate in order to reset. Worth noting that Rika's list doesn't run the Zirconia actually, but I suppose he's running like Force and stuff instead, so less reliance on actually going second and having the Evo point in turn 4. But overall, look at all this removal in these decks. It's so hard to build a board against Sword at the moment. They can definitely go face against you. They can do unavoidable damage with Sinciro. The storms like Odin and stuff, like they clear your board while going face. And then it puts you in a situation where you have to defend and heal every turn, but you actually just can't do that against this deck. So we may be looking at a situation where this deck is just like the obvious best deck of the format. Obviously, it's still day one. Still day one. So someone might come up with a counter for this, but at the moment, this deck is just the best deck in terms of like, overall matchup spread, consistency in game plan, and like, even the high roll potential. So yeah, Loot Sword. If you want to win, you should probably play this deck. Next up, we've got Mab Abyss, so 13 win streak. So for those of you that don't know, basically your key condition is Shamnacha. So you want to play 10 cards that use mode this game. And then you play this, and then now you play an extra 1 mode. So basically, in that type of situation, basically most of your cards have 2 modes, and you get both of their effects, which means that you're getting double the value. So your key win condition, definitely activate this, and then afterwards you can activate your late game powerful mode cards. But we'll go through the deck list. So Castle Entwining. So this card, we basically run it because for 3 play points you can activate 2 modes. So the first one's draw a card, the second one's give a follower +1/+1. So early game you're probably just playing this, and then you'll engage it for 1, you draw 1. To be honest, you're probably not playing this early game, sorry. You're probably playing it mid or late game in general, because you want to play for tempo early. 3 copies of Rage of Serpents, so this is just for your finisher and lethal potential. 3 copies of Chaos Cyclone, so this one is literally just here because it's a mode card, right? I don't think this card is good, obviously, but you do need to play it just because it's a density of modes, right? Next up, we have Ghostly Soiri, so you add Ghost, Skeleton, Rotting Zombie to your hand, so you basically play this and you play Ghost. Next time you play Rotting Zombie for tempo. 3 copies of Shamnacha, of course, you need this in order to activate your condition. 3 copies of Screaming and Loathing, so select 2 of the following modes to activate. Most of the time, you're probably picking deal 4 damage and probably like recover 1 play point, or if you're on 3 play points, you draw a follower or something like that. So this is your removal tool, I guess. And then we have 1 copy of Gilnelly, so anti-aggro tool, drain, does a lot of random stuff. We have 3 copies of Guella, so this is one of the best 3 drops in the game right now, because 2/4 rush is very hard to deal with, and in the late game, especially in a deck where you can actually add Ghost to hand, you can even like pressure the opponent's face by going like Ghost, Super Evo, and then swing with this to trade. We've got 3 copies of Devotive Entwining, one of the better mode cards, so if they have a lot of like 1/1s in the field or 1 HP followers, you just use it to deal 1 damage to all enemy followers. And then you can either give it 3/3 instead, so if they don't have any followers in the field. And then you'll notice that this card has evolved, replicate the effects of this card's Vampire ability, so for 1 card it lets you activate 2 modes towards your condition. So it's quite strong. And you can also do 2 AoE damage, which is great against a bunch of aggressive decks. Next up we have Supplicant Entwining, so 4-drop 4/4. This card's insane. Like basically, you can ping things twice, so 3 damage, and then swing with 6/6. Or you can heal your leader for 4 in an emergency. Basically, I was referring to this flow effect, where basically you can activate the fanfare again. So like Supplicant and Devotee are kind of like your main carries in the early game. It doesn't matter how far behind you fall, per se, because on your turn 4, you can kind of reset it going second with either of these hero effects. Moving along, we have 3 copies of Congregant Entwining, so this is probably insane in the late game, but you can always play early game too. So on turn 5, you play this 4/4, and you just play another one with Rush, and then you can Evo as well. And then, 6/6 Rush with Evo, right? But the main thing is that in the late game, when you have your Shamnacha active, you can put out like 27 in stats, I think I counted, or it was like 24. So like basically you play Congregant, you pick the first one, you pick the second one, you have 3 4/4s in the field, then you Super Evo, you get a 7/7, right? And then you can select 2 again. So you'll pick like Ward, and you'll pick +2/+2. So overall, you'll have 4 copies of this card in the field, and you buff all of them by +2. So it's kind of insane. Not every deck can clear this, and the decks that can't clear it will just fall under pressure and concede. Okay, so next we have Ruler Knight and Valnarake. So 7 play point 5/5, so select the mode to activate either Scream Diffusion or Wings of Desire. So they're both 0 play point cards. One of them summons 2 copies of the card and gives it a Rush, and the other one gives one of the Ruler Knight and Valnarake Storm. So effectively, you can use this to do 5 damage to face, or you can create 2 5/5s after this, and then clear the enemy board with it. And then when you have the double mode active, you can do both, right? So you can clear the board and go face. So this card is very strong payoff. and also it helps you control the board or go face. Next up, we have 3 copies of Cerberus, so this is still one of the best Super Evo targets in the game. So because we don't run too much that dilute support for this, we can just bring out Coco and Mimi quite consistently, depending on which one we want. And so we can clear the board and heal up, or we can clear the board and deal damage to enemy face. And then we have 3 copies of Setsuyu Yuzuki, so of course this card was already playable even when you couldn't pick both modes. But when you have both modes, the effect active, you can go summon 4 2/3 wards, clear the opponent's board, heal for 4, and then they also have to clear everything in your field in order to not die. So it's kind of crazy. You have a very strong late game once you have Shaman and Char active. However, I think if you look at the early curve, we do have some issues where effectively you can see that our early game is quite lacking. It is what it is. So next up, we do have the ramp / Disdain dragons. So I think the lines are going to be a bit blurred like over time because, like I said in a previous video, basically Dragon, the cards that they got, right? The Disdain package is very good in the ramp engine as well. And so you're going to see some decks where they run some Disdain cards or not. I think with this deck, you could probably classify it more as a Disdain deck, but I don't think it's really important what you consider it. But effectively, early game, you just play out your curves, so you're finally in your calls and your Devotee of Disdain. And the Devotee of Disdain is like interesting because if you play it on turn 2 and they only have 1/1s or 1/2s or whatever, then it's sort of like, awkward for them. Like, if they play it and they trade into it, you get to get a card for free. Obviously, it's only during your turn. And then also you can combo this early game with Ferocious Flame, so you can deal 3 damage to a random enemy follower by pinging one of your cards. And if you're an overflow, you draw a random card follower too. But then the combo is basically play Devotee, and then you play this on Devotee, you ping something for 3, and then you trade, and then you also draw a card because of this, right? So your early game is not too bad, like for a ramp deck. And then we run 3 copies of Dragon Sign just to get us to Gamu a bit earlier. 3 copies of Gilnelis, so this card very good for controlling the early game, and then basically healing up in an emergency or clearing wide boards. And then we have 1 copy of Grimnir just for the Super Evo effect. And then we have 3 copies of Gamu, so 5 cost 5/5, and so basically in most situations, like regardless of what they play early, you can just Evo this 7/7 swing to something, ping something for 3, and then if you need to, you can do the 1 AoE damage if required, but usually you want to save that for the following turn. So this card you want to draw this early because it turns on all of your engine. So the crest is basically every time one of your cards in the field takes damage based on destroyed, you gain a 0 play point card that does 1 AoE damage to everything. So you need that in order to proc your other cards. And we have 3 copies of Seasoned Merman. So again, this is like the card that you need in order to make sure that you clear the enemy's board every turn. And then if your opponent isn't really doing much, you can just play this and impression them, right? Like they have to deal with this because it hits out so many 2/2s. So for 5 play points, like this is what, like 11/11 in stats like spread across. So your opponent is forced to deal with this very strong silver card. Then we've got 3 copies of Supplicant of Disdain. So this card is really insane against aggro, right? You don't even need to use an Evo point, but if you do, it's a 5/7. If you trade into something that has 6 attack, for instance, you actually heal for 6 at the end turn. But in most cases, you're just going to swing with the Rush Ward effect, hopefully kill something, heal a bunch, and then your opponent does need to clear this because it's got Ward, and it's going to recover the 4 every turn. And then it combos with Gamu too, so you can heal for 1 extra if needed. Congregant of Disdain, so 6 play point 5/7. On Fanfare, deal 3 damage to all followers, including itself. And at the end of your turn, if this follower's defense is 3 or less, give all Dragoncraft followers in your hand +1/+1. So this card is very hard to activate the second part of its effect if you don't have Gamu active, but if you do, then it's very strong, because you're effectively doing 4 AoE damage to everyone, and then you buff your entire hand by +1/+1, which is quite good considering how the deck operates. Next up, we've got 3 copies of Neptune, Arbiter of Tides, so very strong Super Evo target. So once you've got this active, you just heal for so much. You heal for 4 just to a Super Evo, but it turns the rest of your Orca package into heal as well. So this helps reset the Tides against aggro in particular, and against Sword, right? Because they're going to ping you down, and then at least with this card, you can kind of recover your HP and clear their board for a turn. And then we've got 3 copies of Gary, Fabled Dragonkin, so again, great Super Evo target. Not too surprised to see this. And then we've got 3 copies of Azu Ifrit, Heir to Disdain. So this card, again, we're so hungry for Super Evo targets, but you don't have to Super Evo this to be fair, but you do want to, because when you do Super Evo it, 6 damage to enemy leader, right? So overall, this deck, like, it has control over the board for the entire game, it's going to be difficult for your opponent to stick a board, especially when you still have Evo points remaining. I do think that it's a little bit hungry for Super Evos, but if you do want to play Dragon, this is probably the best deck to play right now. I think it's reasonably strong into the meta, so give it a shot. Next up, we've got Lishenna Portal. So this is the other deck that's been seeing a bunch of success. So effectively, a majority of your package has the effect where it can't be destroyed. And so you'll see cards like this where you select a card in the field and then you destroy it and you activate the other effect. You don't actually have to destroy the card, right? So if a card says it can't be destroyed and you target it, you still get the effect, right? And then you get a bunch of cards like, for example, Axia, so can't be destroyed by abilities, so you can target that with like your other cards. Or, more importantly, Lishenna, right? So with Lishenna, what she does is when you evolve it, you add a White Storm to the field, so 3 play point. Well, the play point doesn't really matter here. Effectively, every time it dies, it summons the other one. So on last words, this one restores 1 health, and the other one is on last words, you deal 1 damage to enemy leader, and you summon them back and forth, back and forth. So you actually want to destroy them as many times as you can. And these pings are really annoying for the opponent to deal with. And you actually, typically you want to get multiple of these down so you can always have targets in order to destroy and then gain your effects, right? So basically that's how this deck operates. So it runs a bunch of the puppet engines. So puppets are very good because you don't really care if they get destroyed because they're so cheap to generate. And so that applies to both like, you know, this puppet theater and also this Love Strike Puppeteer, which is strong still, right? And then we have basically 3 copies of Dogged Ones. So this card, 3 play point, 3/1. So you can clear the board early, but also in the late game, if they Super Evo card, this is suddenly a 3 damage Storm, and they won't be expecting that you have randomly 3 damage from hand, for only 3 play points. We have 3 copies of Waste Down Destruction, this Pot of Greed. So basically select another ally card on the field, and if you did, you destroy it, and then draw 2 cards. And then when this card is destroyed, you also draw another card. So this card basically draws 3 cards for only 2 play points. And then we have, so we didn't go through this card properly. So when you actually select another ally card on the field, you destroy it, and you do 2 damage to random enemy follower, you can evolve to replicate the effect. So this is very good when you have White Storm or Black Storm on the field. You can basically trigger them twice. We have 3 copies of Devastating Soprano. So this card is when you don't manage to draw Lishenna on time, or alternatively, you can actually play this early. So you can play in turn 4, for instance, when you don't have an Evo going first, for instance. So basically, you just destroy a card and you summon a White Storm. It's very easy to fulfill, especially up puppets, right? And then we have 3 copies of Uni. So this card's just a 3/3 draw card. The Evo effect, okay, it's fine, but not really why we're playing it. 3 copies of Puppet Lancer, so it gives an enhanced puppet. So again, these puppets are really just for controlling board without needing to commit too much, like for example, your Evo points or your hard removal. And then 3 copies of Axia, so 2/4, basically on evolve, Super Evo, sorry, you do X damage enemy leader. You want to play this when you have 4 other cards in the field, and you can basically do 4 damage to enemy leader, and you can also trade over a card and deal 1 more damage to enemy leader, so 5 damage like to enemy leader. So this card is like kind of your finisher, but not really, and I'll explain why later. And then we have Devotee of Destruction. So this card, I mean, it's really good going first, basically. Like, your opponent will be forced to clear it, but they can't use destruction effects. Oh, wait, actually, no, this card doesn't have a Protect from Destruction. Sorry. But if you go first, you play this, and basically you kill your other cards, make it a 6/6, and you basically force out the Evo. And a lot of decks, they have to kind of trade in their guy, for instance. So overall, like, this card, I mean, it's a bit underwhelming. You'd probably get cut when this deck gets more support, but for now it's fine. And then we've got the first kind of broken card, so Conquering of Destruction, so 6 play point 3/3. Destroy X random followers, where X is the number of other allied cards in the field. Destroy all other allied cards in the field. So effectively, this card's like, kill everything, and then you get a 3/3 body. I mean, it's kind of insane. You don't even need to Evo. And then you have 2 copies of Sylvia, so draw 2 cards or restore 4 health. And then when you evolve, you can kill cards in the field. It's perfect for this type of deck, where you just want to store them out and clear their board. And then finally, the reason why, like, the real kind of finisher of the deck is Odin. Surprise, right? So you can Super Evo this for 7 damage. So the whole point is, like, you're poking them for 1/1/1/1/1/1/1, and then eventually it's like, okay, I'm just going to Odin you for 7. And then if you don't heal, Odin you again, and you die. So that's pretty much this deck. It's surprisingly effective. Like, that's all I can really say. Doesn't feel that broken, but when you play, you're like, okay, this is really annoying, and it's very effective at what it does. And you can see, like, these decks, they don't really change much between them. Like, they change the ratios a little bit, but for the most part, they run the same cards. Like, this deck is running 2 copies of White Assault, Not surprising, basically 4 play point, kill anything, add 2 copies of Puppet, so you don't need to use the event point, while you can clear anything, and the Puppets can be used to clear other cards, or you can save it in order to combo with its destruction effects. And then finally, we're going to look at an interesting kind of loot sword deck. So even though this one's only an 8 win streak, like we're running 3 copies of Tablet of Tribulations, woohoo! Okay, so basically this card is actually quite interesting, right? So the concept is, it's meant to be a downside where you banish all duplicates from your deck, but because it also draws you a free card every turn, I think the theory behind this is basically, once you play this, like who cares if like you only have 1 of each card in your deck? You only need 1 of each card anyway, right? So if you have 1 Odin or 1 Albert or whatever, who cares, right? Especially if you already have like 1 Sinciro in hand, then if you were to play this card, you would only banish 1 other copy of this, and you can still play 2 copies like in the game, right? But Loot Sword is uniquely a deck where you don't necessarily need that many duplicates, right? And so the idea is like, if you can get infinite card draw, then hypothetically, downside is not really that big of a downside. So I just thought this was an interesting list to show. I think, you know, it looks a bit meme, but obviously the guy got an 8 win streak. I think, honestly, we will be seeing this card more and more often as kind of we go through Shadowless Worlds Beyond this life cycle. I think, like, at the moment, if you just consider, right, every set that we're getting now, we just get more and more cards we can put into deck. And then on top of that, until I think, like, the 5th set, we don't get any rotation as well. So this card actually gets better and better, hypothetically, at least. So that is pretty much it for the day 1 of the meta. So Loot Sword is undeniably the best deck in the current format. I do think we will see the meta develop a little bit, but I would not be surprised if we saw Loot Sword get nerfed. But only day 1, guys, and Sword is historically extremely good in early metas, and so you'll often see it get insane win streaks, and then after they get the insane win streaks, you know, other decks form, get optimized, and then Sword kind of drops a little bit. But I think I haven't seen numbers like this where multiple people are clocking like 20 win streaks, like, or close to 20 win streaks, and the other decks that like are not even coming close, right? I think that's a sign that this deck is probably overpowered. So if you want to win some free games right now, then I definitely recommend crafting Loot Sword. So that is pretty much it for today's video. Let me know like how your experience has been going. I'm not sure there'll be any YouTube content for the next few days. I will be traveling, but hopefully when I get back, I'll do some deck profiles. So I hope to see you guys there. If you don't want to miss it, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.